Creflo Dollar has just shaken the gospel world to its core, publicly calling out Grammy-winning artist Jonathan McReynolds in a way no one saw coming. With fiery words that are now spreading across social media and church circles, Dollar didn't just question Jonathan's music, he challenged his influence, his choices, and even his role in shaping the next generation of believers. This clash isn't just about two big names in the Christian community, it's about power, authenticity, and the future of gospel culture itself. Fans are stunned, leaders are divided, and the question everyone's asking is simple: has Jonathan McReynolds been leading with truth, or has he crossed a line that can't be ignored? Was this a fair warning from a seasoned pastor, or a public takedown that went too far? Stay tuned, because what I'm about to reveal will have you seeing both men in a whole new light. When Pastor Creflo Dollar speaks, the world listens. But this time, it wasn't a sermon that shook the Christian community, it was a fiery statement aimed directly at award-winning gospel singer Jonathan McReynolds, a man celebrated for his humble spirit and soul-stirring music. Standing before a live audience, and now echoed across countless viral clips online, Creflo boldly declared that Jonathan was no role model. The fallout was immediate, sparking nationwide debates, think pieces, and heated church discussions. On one side, a veteran pastor with decades of global ministry. On the other, a rising gospel star who's inspired millions with his voice. This isn't just a clash of personalities, it's a confrontation that could redefine influence and integrity in the modern church. The debate over influence, image, and whether today's gospel leaders are actually living up to the ideals they preach is becoming more prevalent beneath the accolades. We're going to unravel the entire thing tonight. We'll look at previous disputes, insider viewpoints, and yes, the reactions from both sides that are currently stoking the flames, in addition to what Creflo Dollar really said and any deeper tensions that might have been simmering behind the scenes. And believe me, you'll see why this is more than just a single comment by the end. It has to do with a far more significant change in the gospel world. So have a seat, because what we are going to disclose is far more than just a disagreement. At College Park, Georgia's World Changers Church International, it began like any other Sunday service. The sanctuary was filled with music, the congregation was humming, and Pastor Creflo Dollar appeared composed and prepared to deliver his sermon as he took the pulpit. However, he halted, looked around the room, and changed course in the middle of his sermon, just when most people were expecting him to plunge into scripture. Creflo started off by saying, "What came next shocked everyone. I've been watching some of these so-called Christian influencers in a steady but acerbic tone. And I'm telling you, not everyone who sings about the Lord is living for him. Some of them, and I'll name names if I have to, are no role model for our children." The audience grumbled. While some glanced at each other, others nodded in agreement. Creflo then uttered it loudly enough to drown out all muttering. He went on to say that even if Jonathan McReynolds may have a voice from heaven, his decisions do not necessarily represent God's kingdom. It was a thunderclap of a statement. People stopped, unsure whether to continue passing the offering baskets. Ushers looked at one another. In a matter of minutes, phones were out. Watchers of the live stream were taking screen captures, and the video was headed for viral fame. Inside the church, the response was instantaneous. There was a mixture of startled quiet, gasps, and a few dispersed amens from those who were obviously in agreement. However, the fire outside the sanctuary was only beginning to burn. Comments on Twitter, or X as it is now known, ranged from indignation to fervent praise. In gospel music circles, hashtags like #CFLO versus Jonathan and #No role model began to gain popularity. Why did this matter so much? For Jonathan McReynolds is not your typical gospel performer. He is a Grammy-winning singer-songwriter who is well known for poignant songs like Cycles and Make Room. There are songs that have moved people to tears, prompted many testimonials, and even been featured in sermons by pastors nationwide. It was more than just a criticism to publicly criticize him. His reputation, trustworthiness, and position within the Christian world were all directly challenged. However, this is where the situation becomes even more fascinating. Creflo continued beyond Jonathan's name. He made references to compromise and secular conduct that he feels are permeating gospel music through specific performers, and his tone made it obvious even though he didn't provide specifics at the time. He was prepared for the criticism and was demanding accountability, and the precise next step was backlash. But from a few surprising sources, we must go back in time to see why Creflo remarks were so hurtful and why he might have singled out Jonathan McReynolds. This wasn't a haphazard, spontaneous error. Direct or indirect tension has been building for some time. Let's start with Jonathan. He started off as a Chicago church musician with a guitar and a dream 10 years ago, but now he is one of the most well-known voices in modern gospel. He has received numerous Grammy nominations, Dove Awards, Stellar Awards, and even a win for Best Gospel Album for his distinctive fusion of soul, R&B, and worship. Accolades were accompanied by a loyal fan base that adores him for his genuineness and relatability in addition to his music. Critics contend that this relatability has two drawbacks, however. Jonathan's candor regarding dating, mental health, and personal issues has subtly caused some conventional church officials to feel uneasy. He has been open about not always getting things right and occasionally struggling with faith in interviews and on social media. Older generations, especially those who are up with rigorous holiness doctrines, may perceive this as obfuscating the distinction between vulnerability and compromise, while younger audiences frequently view it as invigorating and authentic. Creflo comes in. Creflo has centered his decades-long ministry on teaching discipline, prosperity, and what he refers to as kingdom life. He is renowned for his well-crafted lectures, biblical accuracy, and straightforward leadership style. He and many others in his period believe that a prominent figure in the gospel or a spiritual leader should be a public example of virtuous living, upright and unshakable. Creflo has previously attacked prominent members of the Christian community. He has chastised pastors for diluting the gospel over the years and has even opposed gospel musicians working with secular hip-hop or R&B performers. Insiders, however, speculate that there might have been more than a philosophical difference with Jonathan. One person who knows both men claims that approximately 2 years ago, Creflo and Jonathan met at a sizable Christian music conference. Although the two had a friendly public exchange, there were rumors that their private conversation had not gone well. Some say that by implying that Jonathan's songs and collaborations were too worldly, Creflo questioned him on them. The uninvited criticism apparently did not sit well with Jonathan. Then came the 2023 BET Awards, where Jonathan shared the stage with a secular performer in a segment that went viral for its artistic merits, as well as the way it conflates mainstream entertainment with gospel. Fans adored it. Not so much for traditionalists anyway. You can guess which camp is pushing the envelope in terms of creativity. He was a public figure who gave young believers conflicting signals, and that's harmful, according to Creflo. This is where things become fascinating though. Some people disagree that this was primarily about defending the faith. Some think there is a generational conflict about who gets to determine what gospel leadership and music look like in 2025, as well as an underlying power dynamic at work. Is it the authentic, relatable vulnerability of musicians like Jonathan McReynolds, or the polished, impenetrable image of leaders like Creflo? Conversations outside of churches are being shaped by this division. The entire gospel music industry is being impacted by it. Additionally, it's possible that Creflo's call may have stoked a fire that has been simmering for years. Wait until you hear Jonathan's and his supporters' reactions if you think that's dramatic. That's when this narrative really takes off. Jonathan McReynolds refrained from joining the online debate right away once the video of CFO speech began to circulate. In reality, he was silent on social media for a few days. No interviews, no Instagram lives, no mysterious tweets. However, in the current digital era, quiet frequently talks loudly. Speculation started among fans. Was he injured? Was he planning a reaction? Or was he just unwilling to respond to the call out in a way that would have been dignified? Then, precisely 4 days following the first conflagration, Jonathan took action, not in an angry post or a news release, but in his most natural form, music. He shared a little video of himself strumming his guitar while seated in a poorly lit studio on Instagram. He sang, "If I'm not a role model, then I'll be a real one. If I can't please the crowd, I'll sing till the fear's done." The post had no tags, no caption, and no mention of Creflo. But everyone understood who those lyrics were directed at. The song was new and obviously unreleased. The comment section went crazy. His decision to communicate with art instead of fury and to take the high road was commended by some supporters. Others hoped he would confront the charge head-on and correct the record. Jonathan responded a few hours later with an Instagram story that seemed like a sharper response. "I've never claimed perfection. I've only claimed grace," he wrote in plain white text against a black background. This one sentence became a rallying cry for his supporters, who started sharing it on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok as a hashtag. Although Jonathan's response was subtle, his inner circle's reactions were not. Even mainstream crossover stars like Chance, the rapper, and fellow gospel artists, Kirk Franklin and Tasha Cobbs, Leonard left supportive comments on his post, while some Christian fans even discovered old videos of Creflo making controversial claims and framed his criticism as hypocritical. Gospel radio hosts debated it on air, and YouTube channels and podcasts analyzed every lyric, outfit, and interview Jonathan had done in the last 2 years, arguing that his recent collaborations, fashion choices, and social media presence blur the lines between sacred and secular too much for someone in his position. In one especially contentious moment, a seasoned choir director declared frankly, "We can't keep making excuses for young leaders," during a live gospel panel that was webcast on Facebook. It's remarkable to note how Jonathan's quiet artistic response contrasted strikingly with Creflo's loud, pulpit-shaking performance. "Talent is not holiness." That line went viral almost immediately, reigniting the controversy. Jonathan didn't mention Creflo's name once, but his supporters didn't need him to. To them, this was his way of saying, "I hear you, but I'm not here to live up to your definition of leadership." It was almost as if they were speaking two different languages, one in metaphor and melody, the other in bold, unyielding statements. Even though his base praised Jonathan's response, the debate continued because Creflo wasn't done, and his subsequent remarks transformed the public dispute into what some are referring to as a full-fledged generational conflict. If anyone had hoped that Creflo would change his mind after witnessing the online backlash, they were mistaken. 1 week after making his initial statement, Creflo took aim at the controversy and made it plain that he was not going to back down when he stood in front of his congregation with his Bible in hand and said, "I've been hearing folks say I should apologize for speaking the truth," during a midweek Bible study that was streamed live to thousands of people. "For the truth, I don't apologize." The room erupted in applause from some corners as others shifted uneasily in their seats. And Creflo continued, quoting Titus and Timothy about the requirements for spiritual leadership. "I don't apologize for warning the body of Christ about influences that can lead them astray, even if they have a sweet voice and a smile." Then he said, "If you want to minister through music, then minister through your life, too. Don't just sing about holiness, live it." He listed qualities that leaders should possess, including integrity, self-control, and being above reproach, without specifically mentioning Jonathan again. For Creflo's followers, this was a call to action in a time when they feel moral standards are eroding. His detractors saw it as a needless veiled jab that kept the drama going. But it was not just his words that escalated the situation. It was the reactions of various age groups. Older churchgoers, many of whom were brought up in more traditional settings, generally supported Creflo's position, viewing it as a necessary wake-up call to younger Christians who, in their opinion, are too influenced by celebrity culture and compromise. On TikTok, young gospel fans made split-screen videos that juxtaposed Jonathan's lyrics about grace with clips of Creflo's extravagant lifestyle, including his controversial 2015 appeal for a $65 million private jet. Younger believers, on the other hand, accused Creflo of gatekeeping and being disconnected from the realities of faith in the modern world, and they see Jonathan McReynolds as an honest, relatable walk with God that acknowledges struggles rather than pretending perfection. As the debate grew more intense, even gospel award shows and industry insiders began to take sides. It was no longer just about Jonathan. It was also about what gospel music and gospel leadership should look like in 2025. Should leaders embrace transparency and admit their flaws, even if doing so puts them at risk of criticism? Or should they maintain an almost perfect public image as in previous generations? Then came the forums, podcasts, and YouTube panels. One well-known gospel magazine published an editorial titled "The Role Model Debate," Holiness versus Honesty, which featured quotes from pastors, artists, and fans of all stripes, and quickly became one of their most read pieces of the year. Young people today think accountability is judgment, an elder bishop stated bluntly during one especially heated live session. The clip received hundreds of millions of views overnight, and a millennial worship leader quickly responded, "No, the problem is that some of you confuse image management with holiness." During this time, even Jonathan's music stream experienced an unanticipated surge in popularity. As KFLO's remarks reappeared in the news cycle, listeners returned to Jonathan's songs, some to understand what Creflo was discussing, others to offer support, and as the discussion progressed, both men found themselves at the center of a cultural conflict that was not going away anytime soon. It appeared as though the back and forth between Creflo Dollar and Jonathan McReynolds was coming to a natural end, but just when everyone thought the dust might start to settle, a third voice unexpectedly entered the conversation, and their remarks made the situation even more explosive. And it wasn't just any voice, it was one of the most well-known figures in gospel music, someone who has worked closely with both men and is respected by all generations. Kirk Franklin, who has long been seen as a link between traditional and modern gospel, broke his silence during an open Instagram live session that attracted over 50,000 viewers in real time. "I've been watching all of this unfold, and I can't just sit here and not say anything. I love Pastor Creflo, a man of God who has blessed millions, and I love my brother Jonathan, one of the most talented, sincere artists I've ever met, but we've got to stop eating our own in public." Kirk said this while sitting casually in his home studio, baseball cap pulled low. Kirk clarified that while accountability is important, it should be done in love, and preferably in private, especially when the individual in question is still actively serving the kingdom. "If Jonathan's doing something that doesn't line up with the word, let's pull him aside," he said, adding that the phrase "eating our own" immediately lit up the comment section. Let's follow his example. However, when we publicly display these issues, we give the impression that the kingdom is split and the enemy is spared the effort. We do it for him. Within hours, videos of Kirk's remarks were all over the internet, and some people viewed him as the sensible one, attempting to resolve a generational conflict before it caused irreparable harm. Kirk's intervention had a cascading effect, as other artists started to voice their support for Jonathan, including Tasha Cobbs Leonard, who tweeted, "Leaders, remember correction without relationship feels like condemnation." Others accused him of sidestepping the issue and failing to address whether Jonathan's actions were truly inappropriate. During a radio interview, gospel veteran Donnie McClurkin also added, "We've all failed." As more traditional circles dug in their heels and insisted that public figures should be held accountable, younger audiences began to use hashtags like Spark Grace over Gossip and We Stand with Jonathan, which helped to change the tone of the online conversation. "I'd rather see a brother restored than torn down." Although gospel music is founded on messages of love, unity, and redemption, it is not immune to public feuds and image battles. Kirk's comments nevertheless brought an uncomfortable reality to light. The industry is still one where reputations can be made or broken overnight, and where private disputes frequently turn into public spectacles. Intriguingly, Kirk's livestream also implied that Jonathan had already privately contacted Creflo Dollar to try to have a one-on-one discussion to clear the air. Kirk did not specify whether Creflo accepted this, but the fact that Jonathan wanted to personally address the matter painted a very different picture from the unconcerned artist persona that some had anticipated. However, Jonathan was mistaken if he thought that after Kirk's intervention, the discourse would slow down, since there was a fresh twist on the horizon that had nothing to do with sermons or song lyrics, but rather with receipts, literal receipts.